Hi there, ladies and gents. It's Dan from Adventure More UK. Welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today's special guest is a world record holder. He's also a former Welsh Rugby Union international, and is also an extreme endurance athlete. The man is Mr. Richard Parks. How are you, my friend?
Hey Dan, I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm absolutely great. I really appreciate you coming on. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Yeah, like I said, I've said when we spoke on the phone, without sounding too sort of fanboyish, like obviously you're kind of someone I look up to as an adventurer and as an explorer. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on. It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh, cheers, Dan. Thanks for having me. It was really cool to catch up on the phone, and it's good to finally get this in the diary. It's been a while us bouncing calls back and forth, hasn't it?
Yeah. But obviously, like we say, we obviously we're kind of juggling personal and professional life, so it's we got there in the end, as we say. So what so what I was going to say is obviously as I mentioned in the beginning, you're obviously a former Welsh Rugby Union international, which I quickly want to talk about. So for people that don't know, because a lot of people who are into sort of adventure and things like that, and friends of mine that are into adventure, will obviously recognise you as being the adventurer that you are. But obviously before that, as I say, you're a former international. So, do you want to explain your kind of your career and credentials, if that's all right?
Yeah, of course, Dan. I mean, I think it really does feel like a different life for me. As you said, I was former professional rugby player. Turned professional when I left school, and played professionally for 13 years. Growing up in Wales, my boyhood dream was to play for Wales. And Sorry, yeah, growing up in Wales, my childhood dream was to play rugby for my country, and I'm one of the privileged few, one of the lucky few to be able to have done that. But I played professionally for 13 years. The bulk of my career was at Pontypridd, my birth club, where I won the Powys Cup, and I got cap for Wales from. And then after that, moved up north to Leeds, played rugby union up there, and that was kind of like my second home for much of kind of my career. I loved my time in Yorkshire, and won the Powys Cup with Leeds. Fortunate enough to have a spell in Perpignan in the south of France, and I finished my career in Newport at the Gwent Dragons. And my career was cut short through injury. I tore the cartilage out of my right shoulder, rendering it ultimately arthritic. And I look back on that period as arguably being a really powerful time for me. But at the time, in the moment, it was the darkest period of my life, Dan. I wasn't ready to retire from rugby. I didn't have the tools to transition from a professional athlete into kind of the real world. And you know Fell into depression, and for me it was the darkest period of my life. And um, it was a time when I thought the darkest thoughts. But it was the outdoors. It was getting outside in the outdoors, and that ultimately saved my life. And for me, at the time I was reading a book by Rand Fiennes, Mad, Bad and Dangerous to Know, and that combined with a sentence from my late grandmother's funeral, which is "the horizon is only the limit of my sight." And those two kind of serendipitous things combined to give me the courage and the inspiration to, I guess, just to channel my energies into something positive. And for that, it was learning how to climb. I'd never climbed a technical mountain at that point in my life. I'd grown up outdoors, camping, riding motorbikes, mountain biking, but never anything technical. And what started as my way out of that dark hole evolved through the people I met and the companies that I started working with, um, into a project called the 737 Challenge, and that was a world record project, and really that was the gateway or the door into the last decade of my life. And it's funny, you know, because I would never wish that period on anyone, and even talking about it now, you know, it's painful, but ironically, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I love what I do now, and I'm a happier, healthier person for the outdoors and for the tools that I've learned the last 10 years.
I can completely agree. Like I said, when we spoke on the phone, like for you know, the first sort of 10 years, nearly, well, 8 to 10 years of my adulthood was spent in the military. And obviously when I joined the military, I was like, that's me now. You know, I'm going to do my 22 years. And for me, coming back, as we spoke about on the phone, like about having, you know, the same sort of thoughts and demons. So, and that's why I like the fact that, you know, going from such a dark place and bad timing on both of our sides, and using the outdoors and sport, etc., I feel is something that is amazing and good for the mind. Now, one thing I always say to people, especially children, working with children, now obviously what you've done is very extreme, and obviously is very sort of a lot of planning and training and stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. You can go and do things like walk, you know, you can go and walk the dog, you can go for a walk by yourself, or you could go with your friends, obviously depending on what obviously the current situation we've got at the moment. But I just feel being in the outdoors is a very good sort of coping mechanism for things like mental health. And again, I've spoke to different people, like people from ex-professional athletes like yourself, to adventurers, and to, you know, people in the medical profession, and it's definitely a good coping method, I feel. So going from obviously your professional rugby career, and first thing I just want to sort of say as well is, I come from a forwards background as well, so I can appreciate that. Obviously you were a back rower for most of your time, weren't you? Am I right in saying? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
right. I've got these jazzy headphones that covers the cauliflower ears.
Yeah. So that's something I can relate to as well. I worked my way into the front row, then worked back into the back row. So I'm
very
that's
quickly out of the
I can
front row,
appreciate.
Dan.
I'm too small to be in the front row. But anyway, yeah. So going from sort of playing professional rugby, and as you say, being a proud Welshman that you are, obviously, without stereotyping, you know, it's either farming, rugby, or singing. That's what I always seem to think that most people from Wales do. But going from obviously your childhood dream of being a professional athlete or professional rugby player, and obviously having the injury that you had, and obviously being told that you can't play rugby ever again, what was the motivation going from that to wanting to do the things that, again, the 737 challenge, which we'll talk about in a second?
So listen, we are absolutely on the same page with the, you know, the role that the outdoors can play on our well-being, both physically and mentally. It's been a really tough 12 months for me without that freedom. And you're right, it doesn't have to be extreme. It is really just kind of the freedom of being in the wilderness, and whatever the wilderness kind of means to you. But you know, I've always grown up in the outdoors. I think one of the greatest gifts my parents gave me, neither of them are athletes as such, or overly sporty, but they're both self-employed. They both work hard, have worked hard all their lives, and we used to go camping regular. I, you know, had a period of my life where I was fortunate to race motorbikes. So, you know, most of my weekends, every Friday, I'd kind of mitch off school and load my mum's Volvo up with a whole bunch of gear and camp on the side of a mountain with mum and dad, and come back on a Sunday night and go back to school on Monday. So I guess that relationship has always been there, but like I said, I'd never climbed a technical mountain, and the psyche of a professional athlete, I think, is it's really it's a real paradox, because at that point in my life, I would have run through a brick wall if you'd asked me to. But equally, that mentality was so fragile, and it was, built on the foundation that, I could do, I my body was physically able to do that. And I think so many of us, whether it's military, sport, I don't know, teaching, banking, whatever, you know, if you want to be good at anything, you have to invest in that, and throw your heart and soul into it. And for me, it was how I defined myself. I was Richard Parkes, the rugby player, and when that was taken from me, or when I perceived that was taken from me, my world just fell apart. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my place in the world. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to, pay the mortgage, all these kinds of things. And mountains at the time, reading Rand's book, I know he'd be the first to, kind of maybe not define himself as a mountaineer, but hearing his stories of adventure, of hardship, of perseverance, of the physical challenge, it really captivated me. And I wanted to push my body. I guess part of me wanted to break it some more. I was in a pretty dark place, and mountains seemed the scariest thing I could think of. And I needed that. I needed the physical challenge as well as the mental challenge. And that's what captivated me, really. I'll be honest, I didn't have a desire to run any marathons or, enter an Ironman or any of that kind of stuff. For me, I wanted to learn a new skill. I wanted to learn how to climb and push myself physically and mentally. And I guess in a warped way, it was my way of gaining control back over my life and my body. And I what started off as, a couple of trips out, and I remember I emailed a couple of companies, and it was a company called Jagged Globe, based out of Sheffield, that replied to me, and within a few days I was in their office, having a chat with them. And the managing director at the time, Simon Lowe, who's become a really good friend of mine now, he spent about 6 months trying to talk me out of everything that I wanted to do, and it was Simon's way of, I guess, testing me, making sure I kind of really wanted to do what I wanted to do. And sorry, and by saying that, I didn't have any ambitions of a career, didn't have any knowledge of a world record that hadn't been attempted. I just wanted to push myself, and actually it was Simon who became a bit of a mentor. And through that few months, I kind of learned of the 7 summits, and learned of this thing that existed out there, and that sounded really cool. I'd always played open side, worn the number 7, so all these kind of weird serendipities kind of came together, and I realized I was pretty good at it, and pretty good at performing at altitude, and had enough defiance and enough humility to kind of perform well at altitude and in the mountains. And I mean, the project evolved through the people that I met, into the world first 737 challenge, and yeah, I mean, as much as I'm proud of my achievement and the achievement of the team that was behind that project, 'cause it was a huge team project, I feel really grateful, just to have had that opportunity, and to met certain people at the right times in my life, to be able to find something else that I was good at. And I guess I've often talked about having a second career in professional sport, because that's kind of how I see it. I mean, it's a little bit more than that now. You're right. There's a lot of planning and preparation and new skills I've learned along the way. But ultimately, my body's my tool again, which is a real privilege. To be able to earn a living doing what you love, whatever that is. It's I'd never take that for granted.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something I've spoke a lot of people about. There may be certain things that you can't do because of certain aspects, like physically or academically, that you might not be able to do, but eventually you will find something that you will want to do. And I read a saying somewhere is, I think it was a guy called Les Brown, who's a doctor in America, who said something along the lines of you shouldn't need to be paid to do the job that you love. It's also all done on, the love of doing the job. So obviously you briefly went on to the 737 challenge, and that's obviously a lot of, for people in the adventure sort of industry would probably recognise you and know you from that. So with that being said, what, to people who don't know, what would you say in like an overview, like a brief overview of what that is? Like, what is it to people that don't know?
So in 2011, I became the first person to climb the seven summits, which are the highest mountain on each of the world's seven continents, and stand on the North and the South Pole in the same calendar year. We completed the project in 6 months and 11 days. The Above the physical challenge, the project was also raising funds in aid of Marie Curie Cancer Care, a charity that was very close to my heart and many people involved in the project. And I'm very proud to say we raised just under 400 grand in aid of Marie Curie Cancer Care. Nobody had attempted it or achieved it, but the diversity of the team that I had looked at kind of the problems a little bit differently, and by planning for a fast ascent of Denali and ultimately a relatively fast ascent of Everest meant that I was able to combine those two into a very tight weather window, and although I had some ups and downs along the way, nothing's ever straightforward in the hills, but yeah, I was a decade ago now was came back home successfully, and that period of my life feels like a real it feels really cathartic. I mean, I all of us involved in that project have become really good friends. Well, apart from one or two, you inevitably not everyone shares the pressure that we're all under. That there were a couple of casualties, but 99% of us are really good friends, and we all still look at that period really fondly. But it feels otherworldly because I was just so. It was the only way out for me, of that dark place. I used all my life savings from my rugby career to develop a lifetime of kind of skills and experiences in order to complete the project with the integrity that was important to me. I didn't want to be short roped up. I mean, my journey was learning how to climb. And then my insurance policy for my injury went into the first part of that project. So, I would never do that again. I mean, blinking heck. I mean, I was really all in the true sense of the word. And I look back now, and the kind of like everything was just on a knife edge for 6 months. With weather windows, with conditions on the mountain, like on Denali. Me and my climbing partner, my mate Matt Parks. We hit that really late in the season. It was really warm. I had a crevasse fall on there. It was just really, really challenging. And then after all that, there was civil unrest with terrorism in the Caucasus region in Russia for Elbrus, the last leg. And, the Foreign Office had kind of, put a statement out that it was a no-go zone for British nationals. So we had to sneak in, pretending to be Russian, and there's not many people that look like me in Russia, Dan, and everything was just, I worked hard, we all worked hard, I pride myself on that, but there was a lot of lady luck along the way for, to finish that successfully. Fair play.
I was going to say, you mentioned just before about obviously the crevasse that that the accident you had in Denali, or at Denali. I was going to ask you quickly about that, just because for people that don't know, it's basically obviously a crevasse is just basically a whole big opening in the ground, which luckily for you, obviously you still obviously because you're all roped up, aren't you? So is it when you fell in, you fell on like a little ledge, didn't you? Now obviously that could have been an absolute disaster. That well, to put it bluntly, that could have killed you, couldn't?
Yeah.
And I know you talk to your parents about the sort of risks involved with doing this, and one thing that I suppose happens quite if you don't look if well some of the injuries that you could get, like obviously you got frostbite, was it on Everest or before Everest, and obviously that nearly ended the challenge, so obviously I'm assuming by being around a good team of people is obviously a good thing. I know some people don't like being in a team. Like I've talked to people who prefer being by themselves because they don't like the fact that they have to worry about everyone else, or naturally they will worry about everyone else. But when it comes to doing events or challenges that you've done in the past, coming from your rugby background, I'm assuming that being around a good team of people is probably a good thing. Like I'm the same, like as I mentioned before, being in the military and playing rugby, I love being around other people. Is that something that you kind of love being a part of?
Um. Oh, I'm. I'm really Jekyll and Hyde with this, Dan, because
Yeah,
I do love being around people, and there is something really powerful about being the best that you can be, but being subservient to a greater goal, a greater purpose, a team goal, a collective goal, and that's very powerful. And all of my expeditions, whether it's the solo ones in Antarctica or the one we're talking about now, I try and build the projects around a collective goal, and I assemble a team in order to kind of leverage that power, because that's how I was raised. That's what I know from rugby, from my family. Um, but there is a but. There is something really therapeutic about performing solo in wilderness environments, and I really
yeah,
I thrive off both. I enjoy both. I wouldn't want to pick one over the other. Um, I think the real sweet spot, is assembling a team of people with similar character, similar values to you, and the small teams are probably the kind of sweet spot for things that I've done. On the 737 challenge, there were a couple of legs where we sold places for Marie Curie Cancer Care, but most of the legs, I was part of a 4 or 5 man team and below, and some of the more difficult climbs that I planned for, it was just me and my climbing partner, and that was, that worked really well. I mean, there's six of one, half dozen of the other, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I can sort of understand that. Like I'm very similar. Like I do like the fact that having personal achievement for myself, which makes, some people might feel is sort of selfish, but at the same time I do love working in a team and having, like you say, different characters and personalities. I just want to go on to now to your, as you mentioned just before, the Antarctica trek. Again, like I know that was kind of your, not recent, but obviously that was the big thing that I kind of looked into. That was obviously after the 737 challenge. I know you did it once. You did it once before, and obviously, unfortunately, had kind of, was it logistical problems with that, which unfortunately made it unsuccessful. And then you went back and did it, and obviously was successful. Is that, am I right in saying?
So I've I've got 4 solo expeditions in Antarctica under my belt now, Dan.
Yeah.
2 have been successful, 2 have been unsuccessful. Both, well, actually, my first solo expedition was a mistake that ended that expedition. After 42 days solo, um, I I found myself in a situation where I was too weak to move fast enough to generate the body heat that I needed, and I was on the polar plateau at this point, and the air is pretty thin up there. It's just under 3,000 meters, and I was working harder than I should have been within my kind of threshold, and as we all know, once you dip into the into the red, it's hard to come back. And I took my face mask off to try and get more oxygen in, just because I was really puffing, and froze the end of my nose, a little bit of frostnip, and that ended that expedition 100 kilometers from the pole. And I learned a hell of a lot. We often learn more in failure than we do in victory. That old cliche, but it's the truest thing ever, really, for me. And like you said, I went back the year later, and I was filming a documentary series for Channel 5 at the time, and went back and recorded the British record first. I was the first Welshman to ski solo and unsupported to the South Pole, and missed the world record by 5 days, but recorded the second fastest time. And actually, really, Antarctica has been it's been the itch. It's been my Moby Dick, if I'm being honest, Dan.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the continent the first moment I set foot on it, and it was the first leg of that 737 challenge. It's the beauty and the hostility and the people that I've met down there, even on the way down there, and it's just it's a place that's absolutely captivated me, and living in the docks here in Cardiff, learning of the pedigree that us Welsh have in Antarctica, the fact that Captain Scott's ship Terranova set sail from Cardiff Bay, and flew the Welsh flag as it left port, and obviously Taff Edgar Evans, one of Scott's polo party, and also the other Evans, Scott second in command. It absolutely captivated me for much of the last 5-6 years.
Yeah. I was going to say, so when you're not doing these expeditions, because obviously a lot of this stuff is, like I said at the beginning, it's very extreme, and obviously there'll be a lot of training that goes into that, and I'm sure your professional rugby career would have had a good foundation for the training that you do for these expeditions, these challenges. What do you do to chill out? Because it just say and there must be something that you enjoy doing, like knitting. Do you enjoy knitting or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, I don't get a lot of chill time now. We've Joe, my wife, and I, we've got a 3-year-old, and this is a cliche, but we can all relate to it. This last year has been one of the toughest expeditions I've been on, trying to manage. Well, we're all managing in a flat in the docks in Cardiff, but I love being outside, Dan. I really do. I love mountain biking. I love being in nature. Some of the happiest periods I've had the last few years have been camping with my son, obviously, and Joe, and just being outside. I love. We're renovating a house at the moment, so if I'm not in my kind of chinos and shirt with my corporate clients, if I'm not in my in my outdoor gear, running or climbing, I've got my knee pads on, and in the house. So I I just I love being outside, and like I said, seeing my son kind of grow up in the outdoors and start to really enjoy and thrive in the outdoors. I mean that's my nirvana. I'm a bit of a coffee fiend. I'm not a coffee snob. I'll drink anything, but
Yeah.
Here in Wales at the moment, we're allowed to socialise outside now. So being able to catch up with mates, going for a walk in the park with a coffee, they're happy times, mate. They're good times for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And obviously, hopefully, here, obviously being in England, we're getting to that stage next couple of months. Hopefully, that'll be a good thing to go out and socialise with your friends. Now, one thing I was going to say, obviously, we've had a lot of time to have a think and maybe plan some certain things for when everything can go back to sort of relative normality. Is there anything you've got on your radar that you're able to sort of say, or obviously if it's something that's kind of completely off the radar, secret, then that's fine. But is there anything you've got planned that something you can tell? Sure.
This always feels like a really weird answer, and it's really not in my nature because I feel like a bit of a dickhead if I'm being honest. But I am planning something. Dan. I've been in development now for actually 2 years. Obviously, I lost a year in COVID. Last year with COVID. Sorry, but it's been 2 and a bit years in planning. I'm hoping to be able to launch it early next year, but it will. The project will probably be end of 22, early 23. So it's a long way off yet, but there are a couple of big milestones that we've reached recently with funding and possibly a broadcast partner. So I tend to work on kind of one big project every 3 or 4 years, whatever. I mean, this is not fixed in stone, but it's just kind of how my life has played out. And then but I can't just train for the sake of training. I can't just go to the gym. I don't know, some of my mates go to the gym and they like that. I like to have a reason to get up in the morning and train or go for a run. So I'd really like, I've been trying to plan a trip down the Cambrian Way in Wales for quite a while. It's not a record as such. Not everything can be, not everything has to be. But I worked on a project called Extreme Wales, and again, that wasn't my choice for the title. It's it can press the right and the wrong buttons, the word extreme. But basically, I was working with a production company, and for BBC, we looked at some adventures here in Wales, and I was lucky enough to get 2 series of that. From kayaking to mountain biking to para motoring, and actually, we really take it well. Before COVID, Dan, the royal we, but I think it was fair to say that so many of us took for granted what we have on our doorstep, and for me that changed really changed. I always knew that, obviously, but it really changed making that series, and I think COVID has accelerated that. It's just amazing how much green space we have here in Cardiff, right? Because when you can't go far, trying to find a park to go and play or kick a ball about in, you really scratch the surface, and we're blessed with some great outdoor space here in Wales, and obviously in England as well. But where you're from up north, Derbyshire, Yorkshire, it's God's playground up there. So I'd really like to do something in Wales when I'm allowed, if not this summer, next year. But the big project will be a couple of years yet, but it's gaining momentum. So didn't answer your question at all, mate. So a complete a complete rubbish answer. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I completely understand. I know there's a lot of people who obviously, I know you got your sort of like you said about broadcasts, kind of not rights as such, but obviously people keep things under wrap until it's got put onto screen and stuff like that. So I completely agree and I completely understand. So don't worry about that. It's not the first time, and it's not. I'm sure it's not going to be the last. I was going to ask you. So obviously, I don't want to keep you too long, and obviously I just want to sort of keep it nice and quick for you. But there's obviously, like you said, this last year has been crap. It's been rubbish. A lot of people are struggling, you know, in all aspects of life, financially, obviously mentally, physically. If you could give them sort of like, let's say a word of advice, paragraph of advice, just to sort of keep their minds at rest and kind of keep them going and sort of keep positive as such. What would you say to those kind of people who are looking a bit down and in the dumps?
It's really it's hard, Dan, because until you've walked in someone's shoes, you know, none of us can speak to someone else's challenges. But it has been tough. It's been a shit 12, 13 months. You know, for me, the darkest times came end of last year, early this year. I lost a couple of family members, and I just think it was just the uncertainty. You know, we kind of things started to lift in the summer, then they locked back down again, and then, you know, business relationships, jobs started to fall through. You know, a lot of my income comes from corporate work and, you know, corporate speaking and team building. So it just it was hard. It's hard, and you know, but I think all of us can have line of sight now to the end, and it's not, you know, it's difficult for me to kind of, it's not in my nature to try and give advice, but I'm spending a lot of effort at the moment trying to really recognize and feel grateful for the moments of happiness and the joy that I felt the last 12 months, because it has been tough and it has been shit. But actually, there have been moments throughout that have been real blessings. You know, time with my family. You know, the time with my son. You know, I spent the first 2 Christmases of his life in Antarctica. So this last Christmas was my first Christmas at home with him, and it was magical. You know, and the routines that you know that we've created in lockdown, like, you know, cycling to the park and feeding the ducks in the morning. These are things I wouldn't have done pre-lockdown. I'll be honest. You know, we're all caught up in the rat race. You know, get up, get breakfast, get into nursery, you know, get to work, and I've been really focusing the last few weeks on, like I said, recognizing the things that have brought me a lot of pleasure this last year, so that I can protect them when things go back to the new normal, or when things go to the new normal. And I guess just that mindset has really helped me see the last year as an opportunity for growth, as opposed to the kind of purgatory and that it has been. And I think, you know, you know, if we can, well, by flipping my mindset to, you know, not just writing it off, it's been a crap year, write it off, you know, ignore about it. Actually, by learning and growing from last year, and recognizing those opportunities, I'm already feeling a lot more optimistic about what's to come, and it's actually changed, you know, or it's changing my perception of what we've been through. So I guess it's not direct advice. It's hard for me to do that, but I guess it's sharing my thought process, and in the hope that it might resonate with you know, some of the listeners and some of the viewers.
No, I agree. I get that. There's a saying I use a lot with the children. It's actually a quote from someone you potentially, I don't know if you did play against him, Joost van der Vesthuizen.
Okay, yeah. No, I never played against him, but no of use, yeah.
No, but life is not measured by years lived, but by memories created, which I think is a great quote.
It's mega, that is, yeah.
You know, and that's something I kind of just want to leave it at that, and like I said, say thanks for being on, buddy. It's been absolutely great chatting to you, and I appreciate you taking the time. Last thing is, if people want to sort of keep an eye on what you're doing and, you know, look, you know, and see all the amazing things you've got planned in the future, what's the best place to sort of keep in touch or keep an eye on what you're doing?
Cheers, Dan. I'm not as active on social as I have been. One of my coping mechanisms for my mental health the last year has been to step away from it, if I'm being really honest.
Okay.
But I am still active, just not as active as I used to be on at Richard Parks, you know, Insta, Twitter. My website is richardparks.co.uk.
Yeah.
And you know, as you know, as we all kind of emerge, I'm sure I'll be a bit more active. But listen, it's been really cool talking with you. I could, you know, I could sit and talk to you for hours. I think, you know, I really enjoyed our phone call before this. So I hope this isn't the end of our friendship, and I hope our paths cross again. And power to you and what you do too, mate. It's been lovely to get to know you too.
Absolutely. No, I genuinely appreciate that. And as I said before, I don't want to sound sort of fanboyish, but obviously someone I look up to, you know, in the adventure world. I think you're amazing. Just one quick thing I just want to say is I actually look back at a post I put out probably 2 years ago now, and had I remember people were doing like their top 9 photos of the year, having it on Instagram, and it was like a little square thing. And I actually did a thing where I was trying to like make something kind of not viral as such, but someone do the same, where they put their top 9 most influential people that they look up to, and obviously you were on there.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
It's something that I like awesome. I said, I appreciate it. And again, I really appreciate you coming on. I just want to say thanks for everyone listening. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this, and there is bigger and better things coming. I've got a couple of things I'll probably talk to you afterwards about, which is going to be involving somewhere in Wales. So hopefully awesome. People can keep an eye on that. So like I said, thank you very much, Rich. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great to chat to you. And like I said, if I don't catch you soon, then I'll catch you on the flip side.
Yeah.